Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Development Insights podcast, where we bring you ideas, experiences, and best practices from the real estate development industry. My name is Payam Nursalehi, and I'm your host here. My guest for this episode is Shakeel Walji. Shakeel is the founder of Share Corporation and the Walsh Group, and he has been in the real estate industry in different capacities for more than 30 years. I had the opportunity of working with Shakeel and his team 7-8 years ago on a couple of different projects, and I've been following his work ever since then. They've done quite a bit of work around Toronto and GTA, and he comes with an engineering background. He started out as a professional engineer, and he got interested in marketing of the real estate development projects, condos, and through the years, as he explains in detail, in the interview, he just gravitated toward the development side. And coming from that perspective of an engineering and also marketing background, he has a lot of thoughts and ideas that might not be necessarily something everyone else would think of. In this episode, he talks about some of the challenges and some of the successes they've had in their projects and some critical decisions for new developers. If you're thinking of becoming a developer, if you're starting a new project, he has a whole bunch of different pointers, the importance of financing and how to structure your finance, how to think about the financing of a development project and the timelines, how to make the timelines force you basically make good decisions, and how to use them as a tool in your toolbox to make better decisions. He talks about his process, about how he looks at a piece of land when he wants to acquire a new piece of land and define a new project. How does he go about it? And which is pretty interesting, pretty thorough and detailed, and he goes through it in detail. His design and development philosophy we review, and the way he comes up with ideas and inspiration for new projects. And also he shares very hands-on and actual experiences from day-to-day challenges of what you can expect as a real estate developer, as someone who works in the field. And he shares some of his recent experiences on very practical issues on the job site, and what we call them, the construction curveballs that were thrown at him recently and how he dealt with them. And as always, you can find more relevant information about this episode on our website, realestatedevelopmentinsights.com, realestatedevelopmentinsights.com, and I hope you enjoy listening to the show. Please remember to subscribe. Thank you. Hi, Shakeel. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate your time. You and I have been in touch over the years, and I've been a fan of your work for a long time. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Who's Shakeel? And we go from there.
So my name is Shakeel Walji. I've been in real estate for over 30 years. I kind of fell into it, and my path wasn't really a straight line. It's been a meandering line, but I really believe in following your dream, and you kind of fall into place in what you're meant to do. So I love real estate, and the path started for me in 1993 when I started my ad agency. And so I come from a different angle when you think of a developer. I come from the marketing side of things to get into development. So I'm not a lawyer by trade. I'm an engineer by trade. Took metallurgy and material science at U of T. I enjoyed engineering part of things, but what I didn't like was the lack of interaction with people. And so that's when I went into marketing, and I really enjoyed that, working with a lot of different people. And that has led me to where I am today. So we have 3 different businesses. We have the Walsh Group, which is a ad agency, unlike other ad agencies, because we really think of the developer's point of view. So costs, of course, to keep them under control. Results are key. So marketing every dollar to the most of its capability in terms of electronic marketing, email blasts, getting down to the core of who's buying these units. So, people are really big on right now, Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all these things. These are social media vehicles that ad agencies out there are pushing. But to me, who've done this for over 30 years, I don't believe in that as much as email blasts, hardcore sales. Award the salespeople that are doing it for you. Give them an extra point if you have to get the things done. So started it as an ad agency, did a lot of work with developers. As a result, I liked the projects that we were working on and ended up buying units. And over the years, I probably had over 40 units, 40 condos in the city, as far as Ottawa, Halifax, but mostly in Toronto. So from there, we started another company, a property management company for ourselves called JGS. And if you can visit the website, jgs.ca. And then from there, we started a development company in 2007, 2008, when we did our first project with Brad Lamb of Lamb Development Corp and Gary Friedman of Hyde Park Homes. So that was my first foray into land development and taking that piece of land at King and Parliament on the northwest side, converting it into a 15-story building, 215 units. That's the end product. Working with partnership is always tricky. Personalities are always hard to manage. And when I did do that project, we finished it in 2014. As you can see, it took a 6-7 year cycle to get it done. I always said to myself, I would like to do one myself or with one partner, not two partners. And as a result, we then started another project with Gary Friedman called the Garden District Condominiums, which is at Mutual and Shooter, which we actually just registered and did our turnover meeting on September 6th. So it's been less than 30
It's a
days.
big milestone.
It is. It's a 32-story tower with retention of heritage homes at the base. The Lieutenant General actually lived there in the late 1800s, and the city was really big on retaining it. So that's what we did. And a 32-story tower rising above it, designed by Peter Clues from Architects Alliance. So super proud of that, and my partner Gary as well. Then from there, we also acquired a couple of other pieces. We tend to do projects in partnership because it does help to have a partner who thinks like you, acts like you, like-minded people definitely result in better projects. So we acquired a piece of land at Queen and Parliament, which is under construction right now. We branded it as Warehouse Lofts. It's a brand new construction, but it feels like an old warehouse from Soho in New York. And I remember when we did the renderings for that and marketing, people would call us and say, you know what, I want to live here. What's the rent like? What are the units like? Can I move in tomorrow? And that wasn't quite the result we were expecting, but the result was great. So it's a very unique project with 4 different components: retail at grade, which is freehold, a commercial condo above that from levels 2 to 5, live work from 6 to 10, which is Terrion governed because it's residential, and the 11th level, which is an event space. So that's in partnership with Downing Street. And we have our last project, which is really, for me, encompassing everything that I envisioned development should be about. And that's in Markham. It's at 9704 McCowan at McCowan and Burr Oak in Bursey Village. The reason I say that is because it has all the green initiatives that Markham is looking for. Actually, Markham is not as advanced in terms of green standards as Toronto, but they're certainly open to the ideas. And we're really packed a wall up in terms of what we've done there with that project. And that project is called Everhome, everhomemarkham.ca. But I fell into this business because I had a passion for design in general. And design doesn't just stop at print or structure. Design is all around us. And I think I'm like a sponge. So whether I'm watching a movie, reading a book, flipping through a magazine, walking through the streets of New York or streets of Toronto, things attract me that are visually attractive or have a nuance of design that I kind of gravitate to. So going to development, that's what I bring to my partnerships. And Gary Friedman is a lawyer, very technical, very honest. And that's our relationship. And navigating through the city in terms of getting approvals, Gary is strong at that. And I'm strong at that too. So collectively, we're able to move this project very quickly. In terms of approvals for home in Markham, we did all that because that project is 100% our project.
Right.
It's like I said, it's a passion of mine, that particular project and the dynamics of it. We could talk about that a little bit later. But my motives to get into real estate was I just basically fell into it and I fell in love.
Right.
And I knew I was in the right place. And that's how it started.
And it's been going well by the looks of it. And so I want to ask you a few framework questions, if you may.
Sure.
Because our audience and our content is geared toward newer generation of developers that who might be in your shoes 20 years ago or 30 years ago when starting out, and they might be coming from a different profession. They might be coming, maybe they have made money in other industries elsewhere, and now because of obviously the significant demand and opportunity, therefore, that is in the market, that we need to supply housing. I'm going to start by asking you this question: that if I'm a new developer, what would you say are my top, let's say, 2 or 3 key decisions that I need to make very early on in the project, in the process, that could potentially pay dividends for years to come? And if I want to apply the 80-20 principle, like obviously as a developer, you're going to make tons and tons of decisions. But I would think that not all of them are created equal. And I'm wondering if you have 2 or 3 that are very critical in your mind.
I think being in the business for 30 years, wearing a marketing hat, a developer hat, a builder hat, I probably have a different answer today if you compared to if you asked me this question, 8 years pre-COVID would have been a different answer.
Right.
Today's answer is more geared to what I'm living through with my current development, and that is finance. You really need to have a handle with financing. And I don't just mean financing to acquire land. You really have to understand from beginning to end the entire process, the timeline, and you have to set targets. You really have to set targets. So those would be, if somebody's starting fresh in terms of development, they've got a piece of land, they know the area they want to build in, they kind of have an aspiration to do mid-rise, tall building, high rise, or single family homes. They have to understand finance and their timeline, and they really have to try to stick to it. Approvals, you're looking anywhere from, I want to say 1 to 2.5 years. I could tell you our project in Markham, we got that approved in 1 year. Garden District took Gary and I about 2.5 years to get through. Warehouse lofts, we came in from a branding standpoint. Downing Street already did it, and that took them about 2.5 years. And that was a very unique project.
So just to be clear, you're talking zoning all the way to permit. Is that the period you're covering there?
Yeah. So I would say approvals where you can basically know the framework that the city will approve or support, and that fully approved documents with SPA. I don't mean that. I mean that you've got a positive report, or you've got a positive inclination from the city planner, from the councillors, and you feel that you will be victorious, because this is a battle typically because you're trying to increase density with the prices that landowners want for their land. So I would set that to be between 1 to 2.5 years. You may say that's over 100% range going from 1 year to 2.5 years, but you really have to understand where you're developing. What are the primary and secondary plans for that area? What is forecasted for growth? Like right now, as you said, the requirements for development, all the hoops that you have to jump through have been reduced. Like sky views, shadowing, those have been kind of gone on the wayside, where those were very, very big things, especially when it came to neighboring heritage, neighboring green space or parks. Cities looking at a little bit differently than they did pre-COVID, pre-housing boom. We need housing, we need housing, we need housing. So you really have to understand that. And worst case, 3 years. Because remember, most developers are not buying the land in cash and there's nothing. They're buying it, they're leveraging it, they're putting some money down. Maybe there's income on the property, but it will not fully cover the cost of buying the land. You have to give yourself a timeline. And for me personally, it's 1 to 2 years. And what I mean by that is I usually make an offer if I believe in the land strongly. I will have to do all the running around. And what I mean by that is talk to the counselor, talk to the planner, know someone who understands this area, drive by it different times of the day, in the morning, during work hours, in the weekend. You'll get a real sense of the site. Then you see if you really want to do it. Once you've got that, you have to dive in. You can't put one toe in and test the waters. You have to dive in and say, this is what I want. This is what I want to develop. This is my ultimate goal. Most people, their goal is different. I should be asking you this question. What would your goal be if you were becoming a developer? And for me personally, my goal is to build something that I'm proud of. And I think when Gary and I did the development or what we've designed at Markham or even Warehouse Lofts, I want to be proud of these projects. My motive is more design. My partners would have a different answer. For me, it's more about design, the aesthetics, the feel, the purchaser's experience, the homeowner's experience when they're living in this community, and then have those little special things that make it different. That's where I come from. And with that, you of course ultimately have to make a profit. You want to make a profit. But if I made less profit and I was really proud of the building, or I made more profit and was not liking the building, I'm more like the first. Design is key, and then we make profit. That's how I look at things.
That's great. And you touched on a whole bunch of different things that I want to ask you follow-up questions. You emphasized the importance of land. You said your words were believe in the land, if you believe in the land. And you touched on drive by it. Can you walk us a little bit more through that framework, that mental process that you go through? I'm a new developer, or I have some cash. I want to go pick up a land. I've seen a few. And how do you narrow it down?
So originally when I get calls from agents or people who have land and they want to get rid of the land, they would say I have a land in this part of the city, in Hamilton, Markham, Richmond Hill, Toronto, Scarborough, Leaside. And I would always say, when people used to ask me, I always used to say, was Toronto. Where do you want to develop? My answer was Toronto. My answer is no longer Toronto, not because of what's happening now in the marketplace, but I think it's more about if you see the site, and it could be anywhere. You see the site, see how it works, what the dynamic elements are of the site, and the context in which it sits. You might be drawn to it. I'll give you an example.
Please.
I had a client and an agent who was a friend of mine, and she knew a developer who had a piece of land in Hamilton. And the previous developer, unfortunately failed. Another developer picked it up and wasn't interested in developing it anymore. Just wanted to get rid of it. And she said, do you want to buy this site? Nobody knows about it. It's off market. First of all, that intrigues you right off the bat. It's off market.
Right.
So there's not too many bidders. You can actually look at it. And my first answer to was, I'm not really keen about Hamilton. I like it. I'm following it to understand what's happening there. But do I want to run there and buy a piece of land today? Not so much. She convinced me. She said, listen, he's got approval for 370 units. It's 28 stories. But the height that they've got is much higher than the 28 stories. So even if you did 9-foot ceilings, you still have lots of room. There's a heritage component, and it's gone through the cycle. Like the counselors there really want to support it. They were supported it. The original developer, be a landmark building. It's right by City Hall, right in the city. And once she told me all that, I said, you know what? She called me like on a Wednesday. I said, you know what? Give me about a week. I want to go there. And this is not like going to Richmond Hill. This is the Hamilton, right? I want to go there, look at it, see if it entices me. So she basically sent me the plans, sent me the land, what the original developer did, what the plans were. The plans that were presented to me were about 180 units, but they had approval for 360. And all the 180 units were quite large. When I say quite large, when I say that, I mean, I'm comparing it to the context of today, right? Before all this news about things are not selling, if you're 500 square feet, that's the wrong size. We need more units that are designed to live, not designed to sell to students and rent. Before that, okay? These units were between 800 to 1,100 square feet. And to me, right away, that was a mistake. It's way too big. This is why things are getting smaller and smaller, because price per square foot is getting higher and higher. That's really the reason. It's not like the developer said, hey, I'm going to build you a shoebox. It's not that. It's the idea of keeping the price point affordable for a larger market. So to do that, the units have been getting smaller, right? Now, this is Hamilton. So you're not going to get, back then, the market in Toronto was $1,400, $1,500 a foot. So if you can get $1,000 a foot in Hamilton, you're doing pretty good. Okay. So that was the target, $1,000 a foot. So I went there, had a look, and it was beside I guess a needle center, where if you're addicted to opioids, you want to go there for treatment. There was a couple of churches there. It's a row of churches. And this is one heritage church that was torn down. All the remedial work was already done. It only had the facade standing, which is what they were going to retain. And the rest of it was cleared. Okay. There was a lot of history on the site because the original developer did some of the work for it. There was a lot of documentation. There was a geotech environmental. There was soil testing, retention. There was metering on the facade that was remaining to see how it weathers. Summer, winter, fall, how it's expanding,
Right.
mortar joints. And I literally fell in love with it. And I would have said, I went there on Saturday, but then I also went there on Sunday. I also went there on Monday, also went there on Tuesday. And all those days that I went during the weekdays, I basically told my office, I'm not here. And I literally spent the day in Hamilton. I loved it. I appreciated the site and I made an offer. Okay. So that interaction is really important. Now, some of the homework was already done because I had documentation, city staff saying, yeah, we will fully support this height of building. You can have 26 stories. Now, what I was thinking in my mind was, I want to build it to 32 stories because I could, because the height was already there. It didn't have significant underground parking, only one level. And there was a automated parking system behind the building where it was blocked by a Bell building, right? It made sense. The problem was the unit sizes I didn't agree with. Doing this for 30 years, working with the likes of Brad, knowing real estate companies like a Hunter Milbourne, Intuition, Baker, small is key. They added the word flex to me. Instead of calling it a den, they call it a flex is what? 4 feet by 4 feet, 4 feet by 8 feet.
Yeah.
And you market it that way. So it's all about, for me, it was marketing a size that was affordable. Universities there are plenty, really strong, like McMaster, DeGroote, a lot of history in there. So I was all in. So we were talking back and forth. And that's when I made the decision to make the offer to the landowner. But that's an example, what you have to go through.
So you basically had a lot of, call it the brain side of the work done, that in that particular case, a lot of homework, a lot of lick work, a lot of documentation, which covered a lot of your risk. And I guess the last step was your intuition and your gut, and you basically had to sell yourself on the project so you potentially be able to convince others on the benefit of the project,
right,
on the viability of the project, right?
The biggest advocate for the project is the developer. The biggest person who's saying, yes, look at me. I'm bright and shining. Here it is. Buy it. It's you, right? You have to fully believe in it. And if you have any inkling that you're not happy with certain aspect of it, you have to find a way to resolve it. Whether accept the challenge and say, okay, this is part of it. I'm going to deal with it and I accept it, or don't accept it and make the change so you improve on it. But you are ultimately the person.
Gotcha. I want to circle back to one thing you said earlier, and I've seen a lot of developers that I've had the privilege of working with deal with the same thing. I'm assuming you to the probably bigger extent or greater extent, and that's where do you draw the line and say, you know what, this is enough. Tinkering with the project definition,
right?
Unit sizes, heights, footprint, amenities. Because like you said, you're a creative person. A lot of people that we work with are super creative. They're very smart. And from my side of things, which is mostly on someone who runs the construction side of the project or development side of the project, I see that project definition to be probably, if not one of the most critical. Where do we stop? Do we keep going back? Do we keep asking for more? Do we keep revising? There's endless possibilities. How do you make that decision?
So the biggest thing is time. I come back to my first and scheduling. Time is critical. One thing that I would say that the skill set that I possess compared to most developers is very different. So when I look at a floor plate or I look at the area that I have to design, build the units, we can do that in-house. I can draw a sketch and I know exactly what I want. Most developers can't do that. They rely on architect, interior designer, a friend that has dabbled in it, something, right? Because we're in the business, we understand unit sizes. We understand what people are looking for. Our office is in a condominium. It's at the base of a building at River City. We use it as a live-work scenario. In my office, I have a kitchen, condo kitchen, I have a condo bathroom. We use it as a testing situation. I have done masking tapes on our boardroom table. I've measured heights of doors or casings. I use that as an incubator to stimulate what we want to design. We love exposed concrete. And you can see in my office, in my ceiling, I have exposed concrete, right? I paid extra to, when this was being built, to actually have walls left as concrete, take away the drywall. I remember the CM that was on this job, which is Bluescape, and his name was Lou. He says, Shakeel, why are you doing this? I go, I love concrete. You have to really absorb. To sell something, to believe in something, you have to yourself like it. The only thing I have to say, and I've learned this from Brad, like our first project we did together, the unit sizes were way too big. Because what happened was, and Brad was transitioning from an agent to a developer. I consider Brad a very good friend of mine. Okay. So don't take this the wrong way. So when you get into development for the first time, you want to design it, build it, imagine how you're going to live in it. Everything we designed for that project, which was called the King East, was too big. Average size was 750. We went to market. We sold 40 units, 20 units stuck, and that was a reason. In the end, we ended up cutting units in half. That's how we got to 215 units to be able to sell. But from that experience, I knew that if I was going to do a development myself, it's not about you living in this space. It's about you designing it to what you like. You like a certain kitchen style, like a certain bathroom style, want wide, shallow units. That's what you like. Design that. But remember, it's not for you. It's for the audience who's going to be a first-time buyer, wants to live downtown. It's the environment. That's what the key is. So as you say, how many times do you go back to the drawing board? How many times do you reinvent it? You have to have a time frame. You have to have a time frame. So as you're going through approvals, you're also designing the building with the architect or your inspiration. For me, my biggest inspiration is not the architect. My biggest inspiration is myself and what I see. So Pinterest, it's fantastic, right? The news around us, this social media is fantastic. You don't have to look at architecture just in Toronto. I'll give you an example. Everhome in Markham is unlike any community in the city of Toronto, because I looked to London, England for that inspiration. I designed how that building works. We did every single floor plan in the 3 projects I mentioned. Garden District all those floor plans were designed by my office. Warehouse Lofts, different animal, all those units were designed by our office. Everhome Markham, all those units were designed by our office. We understand what people want to buy. And you have to have that. And whether you can design the plan or someone you trust, what you want to envision. Like I work for a lot of developers with our marketing company, the Walsh Group. I still do that. And I recently did a project for a client of mine, and he was in a rush to get to market in this environment. And I said, what's the rush? Like, it's not moving. The market's not moving. You got to spend the time on the unit design. You have to spend the time. He relied on the interior designer and he relied on the architect. The architect is never the right person to design your units. They're interested in the glory. They're interested in the exterior envelope of the building, and they're fantastic at it. If you have a good firm, they're absolutely fantastic at it. That's what they're good at, not the inside, right? So you need someone whose main focus is the inside, right? So this is where the interior designer comes in, or in our case, where we come in. We're definitely going to comment on what we want the building to look like, because we use precedents, we use Pinterest, we look with our eyes, because the world is no longer a fishbowl. It's an ocean. You can go anywhere you want. Yeah. You're going to see something spectacular. Try to incorporate those elements into your building, right? And I have to say that Everhome is that project in London, England called Tapestry, designed by a developer surrounded by brownfield lands. Everything was contaminated. So when he designed that site called Tapestry, he said, there's nothing here to look at. There's no CN Tower. There's no London Bridge. There's no Big Ben. I want this community to look inside, look within itself, have a draw. He came up with the idea of a central courtyard. And he had the buildings, the front building on the main artery, the main road, and he had buildings in the back that looked upon the courtyard. I looked at that and I go, this is absolutely brilliant, because nobody thinks like that. Rarely you find a really good architect. And I have to say, out of 32 years of my experience, the best architect that I've worked with through my client, which in this case was Urban Capital, was S&P, Societe Generale. Incredible people. Absolutely. And that's what River City is. River City is one of those projects that really excited me in looking at design differently. Most architects, like you and I, we're running from point A to point B to point C, point D. And unfortunately, when you have a service provider, a consultant who's like that, he may be good, but a lot of the work is, regurgitated. And if you're going to risk your life, you're going to risk your savings, your time, your 7 years of your life. Do you want that in the mix? Maybe. But do you want it at 80% or do you want that at 10%, 20%? I'm more like that. Architects serve a purpose and they're also visionary in some point of view, right? But they have to be technically sound. That's my biggest thing. They have to be technically sound because you have to go through design, working drawings, and construction. If they're not strong, working drawings and construction, then that's not a firm I want to work with. If they're weak in the design part, I'm okay. I'm okay because I will help them design something that's very unique, right? And that's the goal of the developer. You are ultimately the master. You're the quarterback. You got to determine who's going to be on your team to help you get to the end goal, right? So it's critical. Consultants are critical, right? And consultants that I've worked with that I like, I've repeated them. They're on a multiple of my projects. And you have to do that. You really have to do that because it'll save you time somewhere else. And you can use that time for something you need for the project. So time is very valuable, right? So yeah, I think consultants are key.
And I think that's one of the things that gets neglected, at least from our side of things, is that, yes, you want a building that looks good on the outside, but at the same time, if your working drawings are not good, it exposes you to that much more risk during the construction phase and potentially a lot of things going out of whack in terms of your budget and timelines. Absolutely. I want to go back to what you said, the timeline, which I'd never thought about it that way. But if you have, like you mentioned, a set timeline for the project, for different milestones, for different stages, at some point, you're just going to cut the cord and say, listen, this is the design we're going with. This is a unit mix. This is the facade, and just let's go. And I have a good fortune of working with a client that keeps saying no decision is a bad decision. It's the worst decision. At some point, you need to make that decision and move forward. So building on that, what would you say is the one key skill or one or two more key skills a new developer? Obviously, you mentioned you have tons of experience. You have decades of experience. If someone's starting out and they're saying, okay, the next 5 years, I'm going to hone in this one or two skills, what would that be?
So I want to just step back a little bit. I may be in real estate for 32 years. I still consider myself a new developer. And I think when you consider yourself successful, seasoned, you know what you're doing all the time, that's a problem. For me, it's a problem. I've taught my kids and myself, and I don't know if my kids follow this, but you have to learn something every single day to make that day valuable. And you have to treat people the way you want to be treated. It's very important that you convey that as a developer, because you can't assume or you cannot think that you know everything, because there'll be a curveball. There'll be a curveball in construction. There'll be a curveball with the city planning staff. There'll be a curveball after the city approves everything and you're building the building. They could come to you and say, hey, you cannot do this. It's not building code. You're violating building code to do this. And you can say, look, it's on the drawing. You stamped it. They'll just say, yeah, we stamped it. So what? It's not building code. Anything. The building inspector is not going to approve it. Change it. So you have to be flexible. You have to listen. Even though you may not have the best day or you're not in a good mood, you have to find the ability to listen and be patient. It's really good to listen. This is something I have to teach myself, to listen to others before speaking. It is a very important skill. It is a very important skill. So I would say for a new developer, those are really key points when you're working.
Learning and listening.
Learning and listening. I agree. Couldn't say it better.
And interestingly enough, you're not the first guest on this podcast who mentioned at least the listening part.
Yeah.
I think we had George Popper on one of the episodes. He also mentioned listening as the key skill.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to switch gears a little bit. We talked about all the glory. Do you mind walking us through one of the scenarios that you're involved in the project or in whatever capacity, and you're waking up, you're getting one of those curveballs, and how the heck are we going to deal with this one?
Yeah.
Walk us through that one of those situations, if you may. And because I think, and by all means, correct me if I'm wrong, I think resilience and optimism is an integral part of what you do.
Absolutely.
And I want to see if you have any good examples or stories for our audience here.
Well, I'll give you my latest example that just happened this week, came to a head. This problem was raised almost 8 weeks ago. The trade raised it to our CM, and our CM raised it to us. And they basically pushed it onto the consultants. This was regarding a sanitary connection in the building with approved drawings from the city of Markham, saying we approve this. In the drawing design, two parties are involved, the mechanical engineer, okay, and the civil engineer who's designing the mechanical system, but he's doing the final service connections for storm, sanitary, domestic water, fire. He's doing the connections. So he's giving input and direction from his point of view. The mechanical is designing it for capacity and plumbing fixtures we have in our building. Okay. Two different approaches. They have to work together to get it done. So they designed the system to allow for sanitary discharge for all of our buildings. Everhome is made up of 4 buildings. 3 of them are residential. Okay. The final connection to the manhole had to be an 8-inch connection or 200 millimeters, because that's what the city requires. You cannot do a reducer in the building envelope. You cannot do that. That's against building code. Guess what? Between the two of them, that's what was designed. The servicing main artery was designed at 250 millimeters as a 10-inch pipe, because we have that many plumbing fixtures over 3 buildings with a gradual slope of 1%. And we're going approximately 317 feet, looking at the east boundary of the property line to the west boundary of the property line before we discharge. So the whole pipe system ranges from a 4-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe, but the main artery is a 10-inch pipe. In the communication between the two of them, the mechanical designer had it at 10-inch. The final sketch was showing an 8-inch. That's where it was left. The trade came to the scene and said, this is strange. You have a 10-inch pipe, but it's going to an 8-inch. There's no transition, and building code will not allow this. This is the trade, not the engineer, not the mechanical engineer or the civil engineer. It's the trade. RFI gets filed, request for more information gets filed. Over 6 to 8 weeks, no answer. Last week, the plumbing inspector went to the site, told the junior associate super, I'm not going to approve this. This is a violation of building code. I'm not going to approve this. Figure it out. They told me, and I just wanted to say, for
WTF, context, that's a heck of it.
Yeah, what's going on?
That's a heck of a curveball.
Yeah, and you guys haven't solved it. So when that happens is, first of all, my temperature rises. But the biggest thing that I've learned is breathe, go to sleep, wake up, take a shower, get dressed, come to work. It's a new day. The sun will shine again. So that happened. I talked to the mechanical engineer. I said, what can we do here? Let's find a solution first. Let's see how we're going to tackle it before we call the building inspector again. So 2 options were presented. One was changing the cast iron pipe to PEX. The coefficient of friction on the PEX pipe is much less compared to cast iron. Slope is still 1%, and you'll achieve roughly the same ratio. Acting on an 8-inch pipe, you'll act like a 10-inch pipe because the coefficient is that much less. Okay? How much of a pipe chase we're going to change? He didn't really give me an answer for that, but he said it'll be significant to where we connect the city services. I said, okay. I suggested, what if we just bored through where we are from the 200 millimeter pipe and just created a 10-inch and go to the manhole? Is that allowed? They said, let's ask. So we called the civil engineer. We said, listen, the discharge to the main artery for City of Markham is a 200 millimeter. Already approved, already built for us. It's already there. We're not touching that. Our discharge into the manhole, can we go larger than an 8-inch, a 200? Can we go with the 250? So the civil engineer goes, you can't, because there are two different lines independent. You've got a sump. So whatever you discharge, it's going to collect and then go out a different way. You cannot do a reducer in your building, but you can do a reducer out of your building. Now, we had completed all this work. All our site servicing work is completed, graded. I said, okay, let's talk to the city inspector. These are our two options. By the time the mechanical engineer got to the site, he determined what the length was. So it's 250 feet of cast iron pipe, which is already hung up by our trade, was done a fantastic job, has to all come down. You're going to put PEX up, and you can fuse PEX to cast iron. But the cost is going to be, in my mind, I'm thinking this is going to be like 6 figures.
Right.
The other option, I have to convince the site servicing trade that we had hired. First of all, what does he think of this option? Does he like it? And is it a cheaper option? We met a few days ago. He looked at it, goes, absolutely, Shakeel, this is the way to go. We don't want to do the PEX because it's way too much. I can get this done in a week. I can do it. Met with the city inspector, and the city inspector said, yeah, we could accept that because the manhole there is really acting as a collection tank. So you're just dumping in. It could be anything dumping in, but going out, we require to be 8-inch. That was it, right?
That's a heck of a curveball.
Yeah, that's a heck of a curveball. Yeah, and now we're working towards getting that resolved. We've informed the city inspector. He's good with it. We're doing the work. But that was a curveball. Yeah.
But that's a very good formula there, that breathe, sleep, and start a new day and try. Because I think what is hidden in that sequence that you just outlined is that typically, and on the construction side of things, I do get quite a bit of these types of calls that something is missing on a drawing or something is not lining up. And I want to say 95% of the time, there's more context to the initial observation.
Yes.
And I think at least what I've learned through the years is that the first signal is probably a very limited portion of the bigger picture, and you need to get more facts, more data before you decide how much to freak out. I guess that's how I would put it.
And this is why
some of them,
that curveball, for example, like every day when I go to the site, I'm learning something new from the trades, from the engineers. I love it. That's what I really love. I went to the site to look at all the work the mechanical and the electrical have done in our site. This is just mechanical, electrical. Forget the main structure, which looks great. But I even get excited to see pipes being hung or seeing the breaker panel for our EV charger that just arrived at our site on Tuesday, right? It's exciting. There's so many different aspects to it. And it's every day is different, good and bad, but every day is different. And I think I enjoy that the most of it. And I think a young developer has to understand that your day will not be the same Monday through Friday. And your mood will not be the same Monday to Friday. I had a friend, a developer I was working for, and I would see him at our meetings. I say, hey, how are you doing? He goes, I'm up today. I said, okay. And I'll see you another day and say, how's everything going? I'm down today. I never understood that till actually when I went into development myself. I no longer have an alarm. I wake up every day at 5 a.m. I go to bed at 12 or 1 o'clock. I'm up at 5. I'm at my office by 6 o'clock in the morning, not by choice. There's too many things going on, and I cannot leave it just to others to get stuff done because it doesn't get done in my mind as fast as it should. So I get involved, right? So I think a young developer needs to understand that this is not all glory every single day. The pain makes the little glory that you get that much better because you have to suffer before you succeed. It's on the daily. Yeah.
I very much appreciate you sharing that, the hardship side of it, because I think, and I want to lead into the next question here is, I think there was a period of time that probably for a very long time that the developers were considered the evil part of the ecosystem of the construction, and
still are.
They still are.
Still are, yeah.
I'm optimistic that it's getting a little bit better, just because for obviously personally I'm of the opinion that the developers are providing a very critical service to society as part of what they're doing.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to see what your thoughts are on that. Is there any misconceptions or myths that we should be clearing here?
I think the biggest thing for a young developer is to know it's not rosy 24/7. That's number one. And you have to work at it. What you put in is what you're going to get out. If you put no effort in and expect everybody to do it, your timeline is just going to go like this, right? You have to be in touch with everyone. You're in the end the quarterback. You got to know what the wide receiver's thinking, the running back's thinking. You have to know everything. You're coordinating. You're the orchestra leader. You're coordinating everything. The violins, the violas, the bass section. You're coordinating everyone to work together. So you really are accountable. And in the end, to be honest, we are accountable. If you succeed, everyone will clap. If you fail, you're dirt. Like you're as good as your last performance. You can't say, well, I did this and I did this and I did this. It means nothing. It's as good as your last performance. That's what counts. The misperception about developers is that we have it so good. In today's climate after COVID, I don't think any developer has it good unless you've got a really good financial support system behind you that's funding you, and you're covered with all these. We've gone through 2.5 years of hiking interest rates. Now we're coming down. They went up so fast, and yet Tiff Macklin feels it's coming down as like 25 basis points. We went up like 50, 100 basis points, and Tiff is dropping it by 25 basis points. The government has to really understand. They have to walk in our shoes. And they have to make one thing I cannot stand. And this happens a lot. And in the circle the people that I have around me, they'll overpromise and underdeliver. And we can't be like that. We cannot overpromise. And I have construction managers and site supers, and I say, when is this going to get done? When is this? Oh, I'm going to get it done this week. It'll be all done. Windows will be in by this week. It's not going to happen, because he's already failed so many other times, and I wonder if he thinks that I will believe him when he tells me that, because he's failed so many times, over-promising, under-delivering. We cannot be like that. That's just a bad situation. And our politicians want to build 100,000 units in 5 years or whatever their goal is. I tune out when they start talking about that, because in my mind, I want to know, what is the plan? I'm sure it's in your mind too. What is the plan to deal with affordable housing and housing in general? The housing market in the last 2 years has actually slowed down. People have put their projects on hold. Their land acquisitions are stopped. Banks have stopped funding developers to buy land. It's not out there. It's crickets. So while this is going on, this is your city, your country. While this is going on, politicians are saying, we're going to build this and we're going to build that. How are you going to do that?
It's not happening.
It's not happening.
It's not happening. It's a pie in the sky right now.
Exactly. You have to be the idea of being positive, saying cups half full. And I'm like that. But you also have to be a realist, right? And when you're conveying it to people who are paying taxes, I'm paying taxes, you're paying taxes, and you hear this and you're saying, these guys have no clue what they're doing.
We need people who've had boots on the ground and know what it takes. To your point, I see the news every day, and it's talking about a shortage and supply shortage and housing crisis. And at the same time, I'm thinking I can count so many different projects that were on hold, have been on hold for the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And this is just creating a vacuum of supply, which is going to show itself in a couple of years from now when things are going to get that much more crazy.
Exactly.
And it's a different beast. I want to start wrapping this up. What do you typically read to keep yourself updated?
My wife would laugh at my answer because she knows it's true. I don't read. I don't like reading.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more visually stimulated. One of the things that I do every day that she does not like is I watch news, CBC, every single day, even though the news is very similar to the day before.
Repetitive.
Yeah. But I do keep my eyes and ears open when it comes to our business. You have to. And because we have a marketing side of things, we're always watching new launches, always watching projects that are failing or projects that are succeeding. We're watching trends in the marketplace. For example, when you pour your foundation slab, architects are designing it with, or the structural engineer will design it with mesh and pour concrete. We don't have to do that anymore. We use fiber within the concrete to do that give it some elasticity to withstand
Right.
some cracks. Things like that. Like I'm always looking at new ways to get things done. I love learning. I love learning. And I think if there's something that you want to definitely teach a developer or motivate people, if they don't know what they want to do with their lives, but if they like to learn, the building industry, the development industry, you will never stop learning. And that's what I really enjoy. Whether I'm learning something from you, learning something from my site servicing guy, or learning something from the electrical, I'm learning something new every day. And I really enjoy that.
So if you were going to give your 20-year-old self, or for that matter, your kids now, probably, some general pointers about their career in the industry, and I don't want to just limit it to development. If you're an engineer, if you're an architect, if you're a designer, or even if you're a skilled trade there. Do you have any pointers?
So to my kids and even to a young developer, I would say that if you want to do something that you want to be really proud of, and everything that you do, the way I look at things, even at home, if I'm cleaning something or I'm folding something or raking the grass or cutting this, I always want to do it to my best of my ability. And people will say, that's overkill. Like, why do you say that? It's just a way of life, like how you live your life. Like whether you're doing something, why do you want to do it halfway? You got to do it 100%. And development gives people that opportunity. If you're big on design, I don't have a design background, but I have very happy clients that I work for that we designed a marketing campaign, designed a brand, a logo, made sales. We're interior designers as well. I'm not an interior designer, but we've designed sales centers. We've designed clothes. We designed for the MS Bike Tour, we designed clothing for them, right? We've designed interior showrooms just because we have an eye that we think we like. We think we know what people like. We see the reaction, we do it. We're not architects or interior designers, but we design all the units in our projects because we really believe in what we're doing. And we don't live in a vacuum. That's one key thing I have to say. You have to have a thick skin, and you have to be able to present it to your wife, to your kids, to your fellow coworker, to a professional, and get their opinion. And whether they throw you under the bus or they give you words of wisdom or motivation, it all leads to that same motive, that you want to do something to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be development. It can be anything. And that's the journey that my kids are on, all four of them.
Have thick skin and follow it to the fullest. I guess that's what I'm hearing.
If you're going to do something, do it to your best of your ability. Don't do it half.
Don't go halfway.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Shakeel.
Yeah.
I very much appreciate your time here.
I enjoyed our conversation, and I enjoyed the opportunity to just give my thoughts on things. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Have a good one. Just one last thing before you leave. We've created a document called Real Estate Development Toolbox, which you can download for free from our website at realestatedevelopmentinsights.com. This document is basically the result of us asking our network and our listeners, what is the top tool that you use on a daily basis to keep yourself aware of information that's going on in the industry, the changes, the trends, the technologies, the regulations, and or if you with the tools that you use to make sure that you deliver quality results to your clients and customers, the tools that help you with productivity in what you do, and also any softwares, specialized softwares that you think are useful to share with others. So if you think there are resources that you're using on a daily basis and you would like others to know about them, please make sure to let us know, and we will make sure to include it in the next iteration of this toolbox. Thank you very much, and I hope you find this document useful.